Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
I'm Lou Perez, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Like a pro. I love this. Lou Perez is a comedian. This is one of our Save the Brave shows. You know, as we pull ourselves out of the whole COVID thing, you know, we're going to start getting comedy shows going again. And that means that at some point, the Bastards Canteen down at Temecula and their performance stage will be open and running. And in an effort to season that whole thing and get you guys thinking about Save the Brave, comedy, Bastards Canteen, we have our comedy expert, Matt Balaker, in-house, who's always booking these great comedians. So we take these Friday shows and just kind of shine the light on the charity and also shine the light on a comedian. And I love it that we do these on Friday, Matt, because I have a beer, Pacifico, not sponsored. And thanks first off for doing these things with me. They're so much fun. And then tell us a little about Lou Perez.
All right, well, Pete, you don't have to wait till Fridays to drink beer. You know, you can do that any morning you want to. But I'm excited about this next guest. He's a Webby award-winning writer, hell of a comedian, an under-the-radar fashionista, and an all-around good guy. Please join me in welcoming the wonderful and kind of woolly Lou Perez. How you doing, Lou?
I'm very woolly. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I wish I had a Pacifico right now. That's a very smooth beverage. And if Pacifico is interested in having a spokesman that not a lot of people know, I'm down.
I have one for you.
Up Pacifico. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so in doing the research for the show, there's a lot of things to ask you about. And I guess I'll just start with the basic question. One of the things, we have a lot of different people from a lot of different creative professions, right? And if you say, oh, he's a comedian, I have to now qualify what the fuck that even means, right? Like, does he work for burritos, which is fine? You know, is he an open micer? Does he play stadiums? So how would you categorize, like, you know, like it's like someone's an actor. Yes, they've been in a movie and they might have even starred in it, but are they really an actor? Yes, but yet. So same thing with comedians. How do you qualify what a comedian is and isn't?
Well, for one, thank you so much for saying comedian and not something like humorist. That is a nightmare that I have, someone calling me a humorist. Well, yeah, when it comes to comedy, I think things have changed a lot over the years. You know, back in the day when you would say you're a comedian, I think people would automatically think, oh, you're a stand-up comic. That's what you do. But with the advent of social media, in particular with YouTube and all that, as a comedian, I do a bunch of things. So my main shtick is producing online content. So it'd be like sketch comedy, that sort of thing. And I also do stand-up comedy. I haven't done it in a little while, but I also do that. And also, you know, developing ideas for, you know, more traditional media like TV and, well, now streaming services and movies as well. So I do a little bit of it all, so which I think you have to.
So does that make you a comedian?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think it makes me a comedian. It's wild because I've been doing comedy in some form or another ever since college. So I started in college. I was probably 20 or 21, and I started doing improv comedy and then live sketch comedy. So you know, obviously, especially when you're first starting out, there is that struggle of like, can I call myself a comedian if I'm not actually making money? You know, and definitely the first, I don't know how many years in this industry, I was paying a lot of money to do comedy. You know, whether it was, you know, going to open mics and paying $5 and sitting around for an hour to get my 3 to 5 minutes, or me and my longtime comedy partner Greg Burke putting in our own money to produce our own videos. You know, so there is that struggle. Like, oh, when can I, you know, say that I'm a comedian? And I think I got, you know, sort of the courage to call myself a comedian. Not necessarily when I was, you know, making bank from it, but when I was treating it like a job and consistently going out and performing in front of live audiences, you know, consistently working, putting out new material. people could expect to see or hear new stuff from me regularly. So it was like, yeah, you know what? I'm a comedian. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I am a comedian. And for the past 5 years or so, all the way up to the end of last year, 2020, I was supporting myself as a comedian. So I was very fortunate for that.
Yeah, you're in the 1% then. So congratulations. And before that, Lou, like when post college, what were some of the jobs you did to kind of help sponsor your comedic aspiration?
My biggest sponsors, I have to say, is that I'm very privileged in that I had parents who loved their weird artistic son very much, and definitely gave me a hand. But when it came to jobs that I had, the one I always have to talk about, the first job I had coming out of college, I graduated from NYU, and I was basically an English major. And the first job I landed was writing erotic fiction for a living, writing erotica. So it sounds glamorous, it sounds like, to write this stuff, you have to look like the buff dudes on the cover of romance novels. But really it wasn't elegant at all. So I saw an ad on Craigslist back when, you could book gigs on Craigslist, and and the question was very simple. It was like, would you like to write and edit erotic fiction? And I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. So I had to write a sample story and send it in. So I'd never written one before, and I sent one in, and I got an interview, and I ended up getting the gig. And so for a few months, I think I lasted like 3 months, Monday through Friday, I would go down to Lower Manhattan, sit in an office building in a cubicle, and write ridiculous smut, like really gross, dude-centric stuff. And there was a readership there. There was a readership that was able to fund, basically, I think there had to be at least 12 people working full-time at this place. So this is like back in the day. So this is like probably 2005 or 2006 where this was happening. And I look back on that, and it was sort of like, it was kind of similar with comedy in that I had an audience. Like not a lot of people who are aspiring to be a writer. They say, you know what, I want to write erotic fiction under a pen name in particular, and I want my stuff to be on really cheap pulp paper, and going out to dudes in a cabin in Nebraska. Like people don't think that, but here I am. I'm putting that out there.
Or Southern California in my case, yeah.
Or Southern Cal. But you guys have the real porn there. I mean, come on, you guys don't have to mess with my stupid words on the page. But it was, sort of, looking back, it's like, wow, but I was writing stuff that was entertaining an audience. And how cool is that? And shortly after I left the job, I ended up going to graduate school for creative writing. And it was interesting being in a creative writing setting where people were writing stories, right? Spending all this time writing stories in the hopes of getting them published in a literary magazine that maybe has a circulation of like 1,000. So you're spending all this time writing the story, you put it out there, nobody reads it. But yet this guy over here is writing Nasty Nymphos number 16, and that's going out there and getting an audience. So,
So did you put that on your creative writing application?
I don't remember. I don't think I don't know if I did. I think I probably brought it up during one of the icebreakers. And it was always a solid icebreaker, because it's such a ridiculous, it was such a ridiculous job, and such a, you don't meet many people who are actually doing that sort of thing. And the fact that I was able to fall into it was pretty funny and apt too. I think I was able to, use a lot of my creepiness, my creepy thoughts, and also comedic thoughts in a way too, to write these stories. Because I mean, the reality is, so many of these stories could be read as just jokes. It's just the most ridiculous, situations. So,
little known Pete fact: my letter back in the '80s was printed in Penthouse Forum. So I did not make any money, but I did get a free T-shirt. Thank you very much.
And what was the substance of the letter?
My 10-inch released MX Missile of Love, all that kind of thing. And it was just completely fabricated, but I thought, I'm 18, I may as well write this thing, see what happens. And then, this is back in the olden times when you'd write something and send it off into a black hole. And then 6 months later, you'd get a response with the bag of the shirt. And you're like, yes, best day ever.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. That's where the story ends. I wore the shirt a lot. It was true. The story was not.
Well, I'd love to learn more about your recent article in the Wall Street Journal. First, the backstory on how you were published in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, so I had a number of friends hit me up with a link via Twitter about this academic study that was being put together, and the study was about, quote unquote, the growth of right-wing echo chambers on YouTube, right? Which already sounds scary. That's a scary thing.
Ooh.
And, so my friends were sharing it with me because if you turn to the last page of it, they had a number of channels that they had labeled far right. And one of the channels listed was the comedy channel that I used to work for, that I used to be the head writer and producer of, which was We the Internet TV. So here I am looking at this list of far right channels, and I see We the Internet posted there. And that was very awkward because while they didn't post my name, if you go to We the Internet, even now, I'm all over the place. Like my mug is there. I'm in the description. I'm there. That Lou Perez is associated with this thing. And I was thinking like, oh, that kind of sucks. But then I didn't really think about it. And then a friend of mine, we started talking more about it. And the more we talked about it, the more pissed off I got, because I was like, wait a minute. I had lost my job in October of last year. And I'm like, wait, it's not like I still have a gig. And this thing is out there, it's like, wait, I'm going to be, sending out my resume and trying to talk to people about collaborations and seeing if anybody needs a writer or a producer and all that. And now I'm going to have this thing, this classification of far right hanging over my head. And I started getting pissed, and I'm like, I got to, my friend said, you should write something or make a video response, something like that. And my friend was actually able to put me in touch with an editor at the Wall Street Journal. So I pitched him the idea. I wrote it up, and he said, "I'll run with this." And definitely one of the weird things about this study, and it had yet to be peer reviewed, but it was out there. The people that they were classifying as far right wasn't just We the Internet TV. It was also Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience in particular. It was Brett Weinstein, it was Sam Harris, it was Blogging Heads TV. And it was just sort of like, what world are you? They're talking about, the far right echo chamber. And it's like, what echo chamber must you be living in to classify Joe Rogan, Brett Weinstein, Blogging Heads TV as far right? You're out of your mind. You're batshit crazy. I'm really thankful. For one, I'm thankful for my friends for pointing this out to me. I'm thankful for my friend. His name is Noam for hooking me up with the Wall Street Journal, and obviously for the Wall Street Journal for running it. And yeah, so and overall, the response that I got to what I wrote was really positive. So I was happy about that.
Well, far more people listen to this than read the Wall Street Journal. So can you summarize, you're clearly then just an alt-right weirdo, or how would you?
Oh God! Oh no, an alt-right. Oh.
I'm just messing with you. So, what was the? I mean, I know you. I know you're not. But like, what would you have wanted to be called?
The way that I put it, and on Twitter, some of the responses that I got, some of the hateful responses I got were great. Because it gave me the opportunity to clarify even more. And I can't tell you the amount of people who were like, "Oh, you're just a whiny bitch, man. You're a whiny bitch complaining about cancel culture. Meanwhile, I'm sure you're going to work, just and all that." And what I needed to explain was, look, it's not whining when you're setting the record straight. Like if somebody, if somebody doesn't want to hire me, if somebody doesn't want to work with me, I want it to at least be for something that's true. I want it to be for something that I have actually said or done. You don't have to make shit up about me. And I said, look, you can, and Matt, we follow each other on social media. You can go down my my social media, my Twitter and all that, and find plenty of reasons to come after me and not, and not want to work with me. But at least those are in reality, So that was sort of the the big thing that I was trying to put out there, and also just like the ugliness and the ease with which you can dismiss people because they've been categorized in a certain way. So and so's far right, must be far right.
It's a little hard to take folks seriously when they do this stuff. And I pick on the left quite a bit because I expect more of them. I expect the right to be dismissive of people and get shit wrong. That's what they do as a norm. But the left is supposed to be better than this. Like you find one data point that may or may not be construed as something that's not in agreement with who you are, and all of a sudden you get defined by somebody else. We've got to get away from assigning people a platform. It's one of the reasons why I have this format. Just this week, I had a bunch of young kids from my hometown who are pro opening the schools here in California, where we struggle to get this stuff right. And this is not a statement anyway. It's hard to deal with the global pandemic, but then also the well-being academically and mentally of these young kids. And so I simply gave them a platform and allowed them to speak and say things like, we don't have a seat at the table as the union and the school board and the parents all talk. Nobody is allowing us to speak. And that exercise and allowing a civic voice for kids got people upset that kids were speaking. And I'm saying kids now, I called them students because some of these students are going to be in college next year, and so they're going to be in charge of their own day-to-day decisions. So it's time to start giving them some responsibility. We've got to do a better job of that, Lou.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you, and it's this weird idea, but like what you just described. You take something like climate change, and Greta Thunberg was a big spokesperson. A lot of people sort of hid behind her for cover. So on that issue, it was okay to basically have to exploit a child, sure. Right? But then in the example that you're giving, where here are kids actually, talking about. I mean, just how nuts does it sound? We want to go back to school. Like, how bad are things? Yeah. Where kids are like, we need to go back.
Shut up! Stay out of school.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I don't know for however long, but I saw recently, like the CDC was like, it is so important that we get kids back in school ASAP. The CDC, and I can only imagine like what those kids are going through, and also. Being in a position where they're experiencing being shouted down, right. As opposed to actually taking part in a debate. Because hey, if they're wrong, then they're wrong. But at least let them speak about it.
Yeah, and then when you bring the comedic aspect of this in, it's hard not to mock things like this, like your article with Ibram X. Kendi. It's hard to take that guy seriously because he can't even define terms. Because as soon as he stands on a principle, you can say. White privilege. You shouldn't have done that. Like everything that he's trying to change, it's all in sand. And so it's easy to mock things like that because it's not, here's an academic who can't define terms because defining something is power and it gets really tough.
Well, I mean, that might be a reason why he's basically come up with this ideology, this rubric where every human interaction, every policy or result of a policy is one of two things. It's either racist or anti-racist. Now, just imagine, like, I'm going to be 39 years old this month, and I'm looking back at my life, and I'm like, I think things are a little bit more complicated than that. I think things are a little bit more complicated than racist or anti-racist. And he's a guy who I believe should be called to account for the stuff that he said and the stuff that he does, especially if he wants to, make those, make that very simplistic, dualistic, those terms. And he, I guess, got into a little bit of a controversy because I guess it's probably already gone right now. But he was speaking to a group for a New York State, I think it's the New York State Association of Independent Schools. And they had an e-seminar. And on Twitter, somebody uploaded about a minute, 50 seconds or so of Ibram X. Kendi talking. And in that little clip, what he said was he had this anecdote about his daughter coming home the other day, and saying that she wanted to be a boy. His daughter saying that she wanted to be a boy. And he said that both he and his wife were horrified. They used that word horrified about this, hearing their daughter say such a thing. And he and his wife started talking about, what sort of messages is she hearing in our home or outside of it that would make her want to be a boy? And then he went on, and the rest of the other 20 seconds or so is devoted to him finding a parallel between how that might be kind of like race. People hear messages, affirmative messaging when it comes to race. So maybe people of color want to be white, or white, just all this stuff. The real focus of it was what he said about, him saying that he and his wife were horrified that his daughter might want to be a boy. And a number of people jumped on that and said, aha, transphobic. Aha, this is transphobia. This is an example here. And why is it it's doubly problematic? Because here you have the anti-racist high priest, right? the cornerstone of woke, coming out and saying that he and his wife are horrified, right, about the possibility that his daughter might actually be a boy. And people, jumped on it. And basically what came of it was, a good lesson in hypocrisy, because he was not punished. He was not canceled for that. A lot of people pointed out that had he been a different person, had he been especially a figure on the right, he would have been pilloried. He would have lost, a lot of jobs and that sort of thing. And I was just pointing out and trying to make, a couple points in the piece that I wrote for Spike. One is I see what the person was doing when they uploaded this little clip, and it's playing on what is sort of the basest nature of social media, where you're going to take this little clip. It's 50 seconds from an hour-long conversation, and we're going to use this as a reason to tear somebody down. And I don't get behind that. I wish that this guy was just taken to task more for how dumb his ideas are, and allow the market to decide that. But if you look at the market, this dude is doing real well, man. He's got like an anti-racist research center. He's a founder of it at Boston University. I hear he just got, I think, a 3-project deal at Netflix. He's got books on the New York Times bestseller. He's doing well. So in the world that he describes, the society, right, that has, the outcomes can either be racist or anti-racist. This dude is cleaning up. This dude is cleaning up in this society.
It's hard to take Rage Against the Machine seriously when they're, multi-millionaires. It's like, well, what are you so mad at now?
Yeah. Well, I saw, recently, but in regards to Rage Against the Machine, I saw a promo for Tommy Morello, who's the guitarist, fantastic guitar player, yes. Right? The promo, I don't know if he has a book coming out or something like that. It said, "Speaking truth to power." And it's like, hold on.
Are you the one listening, Tommy?
Yeah. It's like, hold on there, buddy. It's a lot easier to speak truth to power in the United States, where you are constantly, shitting on it, and then go around basically wearing a fucking Che Guevara shirt. Yeah. That's like Che Guevara is part of their iconography. Right. Che Guevara, who assassinated, who killed people without trial. And just all these number of different things. So there's something fun about pointing out hypocrisy, and part of it is because, especially doing comedy, it's just that it's a never-ending wellspring. It's just always going to be there.
Absolutely, and you're one of the good examples of social media. Like I love your feed. In fact, I probably know your comedy more through Twitter, wherever than through stand-up, but it cuts both ways. So I'm what, in your opinion, what's the good of social media? And I'm thinking more, I guess, from a comedic standpoint, and also what's the evil of it or the wrong of it that you would like to see corrected in the future?
Yeah. So I think one of the good things to come about with doing comedy through social media is it's definitely a way to get around traditional gatekeepers. And, just look at how successful people have been when it comes to podcasting. The idea that, you're doing radio, but you don't need a radio station. You're doing radio, but you don't have to worry about the FCC coming at you. That's amazing. That's fantastic. The ability to get your work out there to people that, would never be able to see you, or during, something, during something like a pandemic where, say, you are, a touring comedian and, clubs are closing down, or you can't get out there to clubs. There's the ability to find other ways to monetize or to get out there and perform. I think one of the downsides, though, about putting so much stuff on social media and trying to develop stuff there is that people are used to just getting stuff for free. People are used to you can laugh at 100 jokes that a comedian's put out there and not pay a dime for it. So I think that might just be more of a cultural thing where it's sort of like trying to express and try to be more of a evangelist for, hey, if you like what this comedian is doing, if you like what this writer is doing, or any of these other creators, please go and try to support them. But try to help them along the way. So that's where I would say.
Nice, and I love your comments. Like a lot of times you're willing to engage with. I don't necessarily always want to call them trolls, but people who disagree with you or trying to, I don't know, be funny back. But when you ever like, okay, this is worthwhile, or I'm just going to forget this. This is a waste of my time.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, and it's something where I've had to pull myself back. A couple of years ago, I was spending way too much time online. I was working too much, and you check the clock, and I'm like, man, I've been sitting at this computer. It's 10 p.m. I've been sitting here since 8 a.m. Some of it I was getting work done, but for the most part, it was just getting into these arguments or conversations that were going to go nowhere. So I think for a lot of people, the goal of an internet argument isn't to win; it's to waste the other person's time. and I have been on the losing end of that quite a bit. I spoke to my wife, kind of had an intervention with me, and she started, and she was saying, look, you should start looking at all this stuff as, what are you putting into this versus, what are you getting out of it? Uh-huh. And if you're putting more into it than you're getting out of it, well, then it's time to move on to something else. So I treat that the same way with, quote unquote trolls. Some of them we have fun together and it's an enjoyable experience. Others, what becomes crystal clear is that, they don't really care. These people, they wouldn't be willing to take me out for a coffee and to actually have a conversation face to face. So it's like, why am I giving my time to them? Mm-hmm. And then also, I think one of the ways of taking sort of like the negativity and turning it into something good is to see, well, what am I learning about myself and also about people through these engagements? What can I take away? What material can I glean from this? And fortunately, I've been able to take that material and to use it. And I'll give you an example. So one of the videos that I did was like a short monologue, just basically about people who are offended, and when you're putting out dozens of jokes a day, you're gonna offend someone every now and then. And what I found was, when I offend somebody on the left, for the most part, they get the joke, they don't think it's funny, and they think I'm a bad person for telling it. When I offend somebody on the right, they don't get the joke, they don't think it's funny, and they think they can kick my ass. So it's sort of these two extremes, and then I keep seeing the same sort of characters pop up, and it was like, oh wow, I think I learned something about humanity, or at least humanity online, through these little interactions.
Well, you've done a good job through the pandemic of keeping content out there and staying relevant. But I'm curious, what's your writing process like for live shows? And I'm talking more stand-up sketch versus when you're posting online.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't spend enough time writing for live shows as I should. When it comes to anything that I produce in the sketch realm, we're talking rewrites and rewrites, like sometimes 8 versions of a script before it goes out there. Like there's so much attention that I give to it. There's something about the live stuff where I don't know, I keep putting it off and be like, I'll work it out on its feet and all that. And I don't know, it might be something, it might be something psychological that I have, like sort of a fear where, oh man, if I put all this work in to this, to this bit, and then it doesn't work live, it's sort of that immediate failure that I still need to get over, as opposed to, well, I put all this work in for a sketch, and there were a bunch of other people with eyes on it, so they were able to help me out too. I'm not alone on this. If it fails, I got a lot of people to blame for it. But I think one of my goals definitely is to devote more time to writing for stand-up in particular. And Matt, you know how it is too, where you have great ideas in there, or bits that were like, this is like 5 years old. Like, why, how did I let this thing age? How did I let this grow up without trying to explore this further? So that's something that I'm trying to do more of. It's one of the goals.
Because I'd say that because a lot of your stuff is so sharply written, and it's really enjoyable to just like see it on a screen. And then sometimes we wonder, how does that translate to a live audience? Is it punchier, or is it nullified because there's someone spilling beer in front of them? It's always like, what works online versus what doesn't in front of.
Yeah, I think there are definitely things that work better as tweets and should stay as tweets and be forgotten as tweets. Whereas sometimes you have like just really nice zingers that are there, but then it's sort of I'm not a sort of a one-liner type of a comedian where it's just joke, like someone like Dave Attell is just phenomenal on that. Mark Normand as well is building up bits where it's just
even Wright's one of the best at that. That is so dense with his
Yeah, where a lot of the stuff that I do when I try to do live is kind of crafting bits out of stories, and sort of working that way.
How do you stay funny on Twitter without getting hammered? I mean, I'm literally in Twitter jail probably for the rest of my life because I'm never going to go take down the tweet because it was fucking funny. And so I'm going to let it just be there. And I don't care if I get to use Twitter again. But when the audience is someone you can't actually interact with, who hasn't read a book, how do you remain funny on these things? Because I wasn't trying to get kicked off of Twitter. Brad was, I wasn't. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't need your shitty platform to put my funny Zachary Taylor joke out.
Well, you had a Zachary, you had I'm thinking of what's a tip of canoe, but no, that's right?
That's Harrison. That's a couple presidents before. This is old Rough and Ready. Yeah.
That's exactly. Okay. I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. Fortunately I haven't been kicked off of either Twitter or Facebook yet. And I'm sometimes surprised because I've the amount of people that show up in my feed who are like, yeah, I'm back from 60 days of Facebook jail. And part of me is like, why did you even come back? Like, that sounds like such a great excuse never to come back to the, to this platform ever again. Like there's an easy way out, man. It's almost like you're breaking back into the jail. But I think it's one of those things where you're sort of buoyed by the people who follow you regularly and like the stuff that you do and will interact. So that's definitely helpful. And I sort of have like a go-to thing if I'm getting particularly annoyed with somebody. And most of the time they're anonymous, so I always offer like $50 if they reveal who they are. And that but the catch is I get to share that information with everybody. Like, I ask to see resumes often. It's resumes and pictures and stuff. If somebody's talking about my big forehead, it's like, yeah, I know I got a big forehead, but let's see what you look like, man. I didn't have this big forehead when I was 25, your age, dude. You know, ripping Raw Dog 68, you know, with a fucking anime Avi. Like, come on, dude. Let's see what you look like.
There's something to be said too for the face-to-face requirements for it to be funny. And let me back up. If the person judging the comedy isn't capable of judging comedy, like, okay, you're a fact checker, whatever the fuck that means, but my challenge was, it's a joke, you know, about a guy that's been dead for 170 years. And then it was violent because I said, if people don't knock it off with this presidential impeachment stuff after the lady tried to impeach Joe Biden, just keep your grubby paws off of Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor, you know, otherwise he's going to punch you in the mouth by proxy. So not only did I say it wasn't even Zachary Taylor, it was be like one of his minions that would do it. It was patently ridiculous, you know, that Zachary Taylor would somehow be impeached, reanimate, and then command someone to punch somebody in the mouth. It was so nonviolent, but it may even be a bad joke. But how can you, if someone says this is a joke, how do you read that thing and go, nope, that's inciting violence? Yeah,
that just sounds insane. The fact that's what got you, you know, kicked off. Man, that's nuts. Yeah, and it's weird. It's weird the way that words are thrown around, like something like incitement, you know, and I wonder how many people actually know what that word means, or at least how the word has been codified in law. You know, the amount of people saying, "Oh, this is incitement," doubtful that they heard of Brandenburg case.
Right.
Very doubtful that they heard about that. I don't know. I think there are a lot of people who will never be in the position to hire or fire somebody, where the only way that they actually get to remove people is by, you know, jumping on joining a mob online and saying, I got this person out, or I'm reporting you. You know, like, can you I can't imagine reporting somebody.
It's like the world's become an HOA, a really shitty HOA.
Yeah. It's like, really? My fence is 3 inches too high? Really? And now you're going to burn down my house because of that?
You're never allowed to buy another house.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Oh, man. It's ridiculous. So the other day in the LA Times, a lady wrote a wonderful op-ed where maybe you guys saw this, her Trumpite neighbor shoveled her second home's driveway up in Big Bear or wherever it was, you know, so she lives somewhere in Hollywood and obviously has a nice living because she can afford a home in Big Bear with a lot of snow. And she likened him to the Nazis, Louis Farrakhan, Hezbollah. Wow. This is someone who asked for nothing in return, just did them a solid of shoveling the snow from their yard. And she's like, I know deep where inside me, I should probably thank him, but mostly I want to call him a monster. Why is he doing this? There's some kind of nefarious plot. And there needs to be like a Funny or Die about this.
I wanted to read that. I saw a number of people sharing that, but unfortunately the LA Times are behind a paywall, you know, so in order to be able to read this very privileged woman's writing, I have to, you know, fork over, you know, like $5 a month or something like that. When I hear something like that, I'm wondering, is that parody? Is that for real? You know, it's sort of what a mixture. You know, I'm going to pick the Nazis and Louis Farrakhan and Hezbollah. You know, for someone, and it's funny just looking at you start thinking, like, when you start making those, you know, she starts drawing those lines. You know, it's sort of, what's the follow-up article in response to her? It's like, oh wait, Hezbollah? Do you support Israel? Is that why? You know, you brought up Louis Farrakhan and compared him to a Nazi. You obviously must be racist. You obviously have a problem with, you know, Black solidarity and the, you know, the movements therein. Obviously, the Nazis. Okay, yeah, that's an easy one. You can get a pass on. It's just so odd. I was on a podcast not too long ago, and the host was talking about where he lived, and he happens to live in the South, and a lot of the assholes that he has to deal with in his life there were Trump supporters. And it's like, and I'm like, man, that sucks. It sucks that for one that you're dealing with jerks and they're Trump supporters, and he'd had like legit threats on his life, and it's like, come on, that's gross, that's disgusting. And he thought that I would have maybe similar interactions, and I had to explain to him, like, dude, I live in Brooklyn, so every asshole that I have to deal with is a Biden Harris supporter, and it's just the reality of, look, just because you vote for quote unquote the right candidate, it doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you the type of person who, like the woman in the LA Times describing this guy who just goes out of his way, and it's like, oh, I see a neighbor who's in need, I'll go help them out, not think much of it. Probably never thought that he would be the centerpiece in a Los Angeles Times article. And I think really simple, boring people will rely on these tribal affiliations as a way not to deal with the fact that they might need some help, they might need some growth, they might need to work on themselves a little bit, So
one of the things that she says in the article, and I'm glad to cut and paste and send it to you, the LA Times will get over it. But the one of the things they say is, she's like, it sucks when your neighborhood isn't full of people like you. And I'm just like, I'm glad you're saying this in public. Like, this is fantastic, so that we can all understand what bigotry and intolerance look like, because here it is. We're all wired to be intolerant and bigots, but can we evolve past it? Can you realize when you say something like that, like, oh, I love black people, I have a black friend or whatever, these things all work to our disadvantage when we say these things. And when you say that, you talk about privilege, and here you have two homes and one of them is in the mountains.
Right.
It just gets a little bit hard to, I'm glad it's public so that we can all see how much we're all assholes, and lighten up a little bit,
I think someone recently on Twitter said that they enjoy being able to argue at a dinner table. They like having arguments with people who obviously they disagree with each other, and being able to come together at a dinner table and argue is very important for them. And I responded by saying, I think it's great when you're able to hang out with people at a dinner table who have original ideas. I mean, forget about the arguing. I like somebody with something original to say. That's great. And I think one of the problems too, and again, I didn't read the LA Times piece, but based on how you're just describing the woman, you do wonder, what does her social circle look like? And oftentimes you have people in particular, well-off, college-educated people who seem to just kind of hang out with those same people. And, not to, toot my own horn, but I think I'm very fortunate in that I have so many people in my life who are not in my industry, who are not trying to be comedians, who are not trying to be writers. I'm the son of a butcher. I have 3 brothers who are butchers. I have another brother who is a school teacher. I have cousins who work, who are tin knockers. I have people, I know quite a few people who smoke. Sam Harris made a point on one of his podcasts a while ago. He's like, I don't have anybody in my social circle who smokes. I don't have, and it's that small element of, well, it's like, well, what are the conversations that you're having? And you have so many people who they don't know what it's like to run a business. They don't know what it's like to run a business that fails. They don't know what it's like to, be out of work because, something like COVID hits.
Yeah.
And they get to live in sort of this, not a fantasy world, a real world that they have constructed with people who are just like them, and therefore the rest of the world must be just like them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a post you had pretty recently, Lou, where you said something to the effect of anyone who can't afford $15 an hour to pay someone shouldn't be in business, signed Amazon. And I kind of thought a little bit about your background, because I know your father, you mentioned, was a butcher. Did he have to like hire and fire people, or?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't checked in with them on that front, on the business for a
on the
while.
HR angle.
I might have to hit them up for a job real soon.
But it just reminds. I mean, even if not, he worked all business in a very competitive industry.
It definitely has. It definitely has an impact. Yeah.
How did that color you on an issue like minimum wage, for instance, which is really competition, I think, more than anything?
Yeah, like on that front, you know, so you know, as a butcher, you have to have certain skills, right? So I used to have a roommate in Los Angeles who was a musician. He was in a band. He used to write jingles for commercials. He used to write music for TV shows. He was doing really well, right? He's doing even better now. Now, if my dad wanted to hire him as a butcher, well, he's not worth shit as a butcher because he doesn't know the trade, right? So the idea that you're going to say, well, no, you have to pay him $15 an hour, even though this guy doesn't have the skills, it just doesn't make any sense. And also having a family that works in retail, the idea is, how much are you producing an hour? Sometimes the business is slow, and maybe you've taken care of 5 customers, and all 5 of them all together they say $45. It's like, well, how does that break down then when it comes to, well, how much did the product cost before you made the cuts? How much is the overhead and all that? There's all these factors that go into it long before we even get to greed. In order for you to be greedy, you got to deal with all this other shit first. You have all this other overhead between, before you even get to like one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
Well said.
Seriously. Yeah. Boy, we jumped to some big conclusions. It's just, yeah. I want to go back to the comedy stuff and try to, as we kind of get towards the end here, what are you working on right now? Like, what's on top of mind for you? Where do you think you're funniest right now?
Yeah. So something that I'm really excited about is I'm getting back into producing sketch comedy. So over the past couple of months, I've spent time writing, producing, shooting, and right now we're in post-production on a number of sketches. And tonight I'm going to be releasing the first one. And this is the first sketch that I've released, in I think over 5 months, something like that. So this is it's been a long time coming. So if people go to my YouTube page, that's where I'll be releasing the new sketches. And then also on top of that, I've been doing a podcast of my own since early October of last year. So I'm excited about that as well. I'm particularly excited about just the types of people that I'm able to get on, where it's like, oh, so-and-so is the former president of the ACLU and she's down to talk to me for an hour. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
And I think going back to like what you were saying, Matt, like asking the question of, what's, some of the upsides of this. I mean, that's definitely one of them. I mean, with the technology that we have, you're able to, talk to some of the most brilliant, interesting people out there. And, look at, people like Joe Rogan, who's made a whole, industry and brand of like, here's a comedian, someone who's very interested in the world and stuff. And it's like, well, what happens when you get a nuclear physicist and a comedian together? What are they going to talk about? So that's been one of the really fun things too about social media, about technology being able to put together these juxtapositions that otherwise really I don't think that would ever actually happen.
And what are your favorite types of guests? How do you want to see your show over the years?
Yeah, so I think my favorite types are people who have made something that I really enjoyed, and I just want other people to know that what they made is out there. So 2 examples I had, there's an amazing documentary called Red Dog about a saloon / go-go bar strip club in Oklahoma City, and it's notorious. And there's a documentary about it, and the one of the documentary makers is a guy named Luke Dick, who is a singer-songwriter, and also his mother used to be a dancer and a bartender at this strip club, right? So it's an amazing documentary telling that story. And one night, my wife and I watched it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna hit that guy up. But looks like he has a Facebook page. Let me see if I can get him. And he got back to me, and boom, I got him. I have him on. Coming up, I have another documentary called Pigeon Kings, which I think I watched probably like the next day after Red Dog. So Pigeon Kings is about people, like guys, where the sport is flying pigeons. They fly pigeons overhead, and it's a particular kind of pigeon that does like loop-de-loops, and the more spins and turns they have, the more points you get. And they're out in LA. They're out in like Englewood, right? So you have a community of guys in LA flying pigeons, and somebody made a documentary about it. And I'm going to have two of the figures featured in the documentary on, as well as the filmmaker. And it's like that kind of stuff that I wish I had more of an infrastructure where I was able to do more of that. And maybe one day I'll be able to get to the point. But I feel like, definitely spending so much time online, there's so much to be angry about. There's so much to be, to get swept up in. There's so much time to be wasted, where when you actually find something that, makes even just the smallest impact in your life, or how you see the world, those stories that you want to tell, it's like, oh, we got to just boost that as much as we can. And that's what I hope to be able to do more of.
It's one of the best things about having a show is you just get to collect all these incredible people. You're like, this is what you do. Like this, it's shocking, some of these lives that you get to interact with. And like you said, they say yes. I mean, you said yes. People say yes to doing this, and it's such a life fulfilling and enriching thing. It's changed my life to have a show, and I appreciate you coming on and everything. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I'll let Matt close out, but I appreciate the hell out of you for coming on. Matt?
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
And I too appreciate the hell out of having Lou Perez come on. So for folks out there, obviously podcasts, where can they get more Lou?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, thelouperez.com. And you can follow me on most social media at the Lou Perez. And also, if you're interested in supporting, I am on locals.com, thelouperez.locals.com.
Yeah, go to Locals and support them. Support the Break It Down show on YouTube by subscribing and hit the reminder bell so that way you know when we go live. We have a little PayPal link where you can just drop a couple of dollars in either every month, or if you feel like supporting the show, all that money goes right back into the show as an investment. That's how you can support us. You can always support Save the Brave at savethebrave.org. You can go there. Same thing. You can just do a monthly donation or a one-time thing. If you're interested in your town supporting Save the Brave, we'll come out and we'll figure out how to put together an event, get some businesses together, and do something big for charity. And if it's not Save the Brave, do something. As long as you're doing something for charity, you're doing the right thing. And thank you, Matt, for setting all these up. I appreciate you.
Thank you.